Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Sami Speaks. My name is Sami T Naseem, and yeah, this is our first episode, our first program. It's quite surreal, I must say. Sami Speaks is a political and cultural show in which we will discuss various different things, some pertaining to religion, some theology, politics, of course, current events, business, finance, and much more, inshallah. Today, we have a big show, inshallah. We have a lot to discuss, a lot to go over. We're going to be talking about these fake immigration statistics that I'm seeing be thrown around by the likes of Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick and such. And then we're really going to talk about the current state of immigration as a whole in the UK. I'm sure there'll be some people who are watching, who are already in the UK, who already know how it is, and then some people who are watching from overseas. What are we going to discuss also? We're going to discuss Charlie Kirk. We're going to look at his assassination. We're going to look at, it's been a month now, right? So we're going to look at how the world has reflected who Charlie Kirk really was, who his alliances were to, and all of this. Because there's a lot of theories that are flying around. So I'm going to discuss them, give my opinion, give my thoughts, inshallah. And then what else are we going to discuss? Our featured story today is the topic of Gaza. Now, this is a big one, right? There's a lot to go over. So I thought what we could do is really go over a timeline of sorts from the Trump 20-point peace plan to then when it was signed, when it was agreed to, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's been some ugly, notably what happened on the 9th of October. Right, so President Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the war criminal himself, that's actually a compliment. He's a lot worse than that. But they were in the White House, they were stood up there on their podiums, and Trump announced his 20-point peace plan, right? Broken up, obviously, into 20 points. And I remember when they had the press conference, I was getting a bite to eat, and I went on I think it was the White House's website, and I read each and every point, all 20 points. And I don't want to say I was, ecstatic at it. It wasn't perfect, but especially considering what we were told at the start of the year. They were saying they're going to forcefully displace the Palestinian plight and all of this. And if you've read the plan, you will see that it doesn't say that no longer. And they probably saw how unpopular it was amongst pretty much everyone, right? Whether you were on the left, on the right, whether you were Muslim, non-Muslim, whether you were young, old, pretty much no one liked it, right? No one was a fan of it. So they got rid of that. They also said, I believe it said in the third point, that there would be a lasting, an enduring, a permanent ceasefire, right? And I'll be honest, I smirked at that because I thought, a ceasefire with Israel. We saw what happened in January, and this is the point I wanted to make, is that in January there was also a ceasefire, right? And it was brokered by the Trump admin. Or at least that's what the Trump admin was saying. The staffers were saying it was brokered by the Trump admin. We're so, pleased that President Trump had been able to negotiate with both states, even before inauguration, right? So he isn't even president yet. He's president-elect, and he's already brokered a ceasefire. Peace is already here, right? And then, not long later, Israel, again, had broken the ceasefire, right? We know that it doesn't seem like Israel can keep a promise. We all know that. But as soon as the Trump admin were obviously briefed that it was broke, they then threw it back on Biden as if it was a Biden ceasefire. And technically it was, because it was through his administration. And a lot of the fault will always go on Biden, because this conflict, or should I say genocide, that's what it is really. There's no need to sugarcoat it. It is a unequivocal genocide. It's a barbaric slaughter is what it is. But Obviously, they started under Biden. But the thing is with Trump is that Trump likes to call himself the peace president, right? He likes to say, he stopped 8 wars. That's what he's saying a lot of the time right now. He's saying, I've stopped 8 wars. Nobody's better than me. The peace president. All of this. His usual shenanigans. And I actually thought that, right? I thought that Trump was this peace president. Because if you look at his first administration, from 2017 to 2021, more or less, pretty much no wars were started, right? There were some wars that were started under Obama, and they sort of bled into Trump's first admin. But more or less, he didn't really start any wars. He was pretty much focused on domestic policy and didn't focus on what was going on overseas, which, to be fair, worked, very good for him. Because I would argue that's what got him voted for and eventually won in last year's presidential election. But nevertheless, right, that was what happened on the 29th of September. Fast forward to the 9th of October, you had both parties, the Israel forces and the Hamas leadership, both agreeing to the first phase, right? And what is this also? Why are we breaking it into phases? If you've read the plan, there were no phases within the plan, right? And I don't think I saw anyone pick up on this, but what is this semantical gymnastics? What's going on here? We're just playing with words. And we know why they're doing it. It's because they want an excuse for whenever they break it. And obviously we saw that's happened because on the 9th of October, the same day they had agreed to the ceasefire, they went and broke it. I believe it was like half an hour after. What is this? It becomes comical, right? It becomes comical. But as soon as you start to realize that lives are at stake, lives, innocent lives, men, women, and children, and you look at, it was reported by the Gaza Health Ministry that 11 had died on that day, on the 9th of October. That humor quickly fades into sorrow because you're like, oh my goodness, there's no political points to be made here. There's no argumentation to be made here. It's not a debate. It's not about winning in debate. It's none of this. Lives are at stake. Lives. Right? And when lives are at stake, everything else is dropped. But we've got this Israeli state here, and from the last time I've read, it looks like they've broken it 47 times from the 9th of October to today, 27th of October. It looks like they've broken it 47 times. I mean, imagine if you had a mate, you had an agreement with him, you worked it out, you shook hands, and just 2.5 weeks later, what happened? He'd broken it 47 times. You'd be like, this isn't a mate. I can't negotiate with this guy. Breaking it once is enough, but 47 times. It's very unfortunate. When we look at the conflict holistically, it's been over 2 years now. We've saw an Israeli state carry out a genocide, right? It's an unequivocal genocide. There is no beating around the bush. We have saw 70,000 lives lost at the behest of this Israeli occupation, right? We have saw 68,000 in the Gaza Strip, and we've saw an additional 1,000 in the West Bank, right? Amounting to a 70,000 total, which, by the way, Hamas do not even govern the West Bank, right? They do not even reside in the West Bank. So why is it that in excess of 70,000 lives are being lost? And why is it that 1,000 are being lost in the West Bank? Why is it that Israeli troops are being sent to the West Bank? Why is this? Why is it that $22 billion, we talk about Trump, he goes by the slogan, America First. Why is it that we have saw $22 billion in military aid being sent to Israel? Okay? Yes, you can, if America First means not interfering with foreign entanglements, I'm all for it. But this is the thing, is that Trump could have stopped this day one. He could have completely shut off all money that was being funneled to Israel, and yet he didn't. And therefore, it's took him 10 months to get to this point, which, by the way, isn't even a perfect point. It's better than when we were 10 months ago, but it's not a perfect point. Why is it took him 10 months? I'm sorry to say, but the man has blood on his hands. That's what it is. And I'm not here to critique Trump. I'm not here to be affiliated with either side. That doesn't mean I'm on the left. That doesn't mean I'm on the right. There are innocent Gazans who have died and will continue to die if we do not stand against this, right? We have this Netanyahu guy who's trying to get the MAGA base, the MAGA vote, the MAGA love, going all these podcasts, going on the Nelk Boys, going on PBD. He ain't coming on mine, that's for sure. Anyway, it is absolutely unsettling what we have saw and what we have become so immune to, so desensitized to for the past 10 months. But what can we do? All we can do is talk against it, continue to do that. There's a reason why this Netanyahu guy is going on all these podcasts, is because he sees, and I even saw it, I saw the Jared Kushner and I saw the Steve Witkoff interview on 60 Minutes. And to be fair, the way they started that, they were saying a lot of stuff I've been saying for years now, right? Or these past couple of years. And they've said that this war, this conflict, is no longer in the best interest of Israel, right? Israel is losing support. If you look at social media, if you look at every generation, every faction, young, old, anyone and everyone, nobody likes Israel. They have some sort of resemblance of popularity among the evangelical crowd. But all in all, they are very disliked, okay? And that's probably why they've come to the table, why Trump's come to the table 10 months later. They call him a businessman, but it took him 10 months to get to the table? What is this? They've done this interview, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. They've said it's no longer in the best interest of Israel. I completely agree. Israel has become a country now that's probably the most hated country on the planet. It's not even close. The current state of immigration in the United Kingdom is a bit crazy, right? This is an issue that has really become apparent amongst pretty much everyone and anyone. And you can't really argue against the fact that it is definitely the top issue amongst British people. It's by far the top issue. From every polling site you will look at, you will find that immigration is the top issue, from YouGov to Ipsos. It doesn't matter, right? Not even the economy is a bigger priority to British people. Now, we can discuss why this is happening and whether it actually is the top issue, and I would actually argue that it probably is. However, I believe and I think and I feel we should be able to have a conversation about immigration without manufacturing, without fabricating, without lying about statistics, right? Seems quite reasonable, quite fair. But what I'm seeing is I'm seeing these statistics being thrown around, being espoused, frankly, by the likes of Nigel Farage, as I said, Robert Jenrick, these types of individuals. And what they're saying is they're saying that we've got 40 to 47% of immigrants are more likely to be convicted of sexual assault, right? That's the one they're throwing around a lot. And then there's another one. They're saying that whether you're an Afghan or an Eritrean male, you're 22 times more likely to be committed of rape in London, okay? Now, at face value, these sound despicable, and you can see why people would be against, obviously, some of these people coming into our country and being let into our country. That is, again, it's reasonable, right? Had these statistics been, of course, real. I'm sorry to say, but they're not, right? They are absolutely baseless. They have no merit whatsoever. If anything, all they have is bias, and I'll tell you why. So, it just so happens to be that both of these statistics are coming from the exact same source, right? Both of these statistics that I am seeing be thrown around are from the same source. What is this source? The source is a think tank, a conservative, right-leaning think tank called the Center for Migration Control, the CMC, right? Okay, that's fine. That's no worries. As long as it's reputable and verifiable and reliable and valid data, then there should be no problem. So what do, right? And I don't think enough British really do this, is we don't really do our due diligence. We just look at statistics and such at face value, and if they fit our narrative, we spew them, right? To our friends, to our family, to our colleagues. That's a problem in and of itself. So what I decided to do is I decided to do my due diligence, have a look at this data, and I went on the Center for Migration Control's website, And I saw that these statistics are, well, one of them wasn't even on the website anymore, okay? One of them wasn't even on the website anymore, but the one that was, right, had a PDF attached, and it was a Freedom of Information request that they got from the police, okay? So I clicked on it. I clicked off the Freedom of Information request, and I found that there was a massive piece of data collection that was deleted, that was taken off, right? So I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here, right? This already looks pretty dodgy, right? But I'm like, you know what? Let's just stay neutral. Let's stay objective, right? I look at the population numbers that they used for the Afghan population, right? And what they did was they had deflated, right? They had used a smaller population number for Afghans and Eritreans in London than the other white counterparts, right? So the Afghan population in London is around 48,000. It said 12,000 on the report, right? So that's a 4 times deduction, right? So we all know where this is going. If you deduce number, population number, it will look like a bigger times more likely figure than it actually is. So I use the correct population sample, which is again 48,000. I compare that to the amount of rapes and sexual assault cases. And it goes from a 22 times more likely figure, right? 22 times more likely to be committed of rape to a 3 times more likely figure to be committed of rape. Now, granted, that's still 3 times more likely. That's a conversation we can have. Absolutely. No worries, no problem. We can talk about immigration. We can talk about who seems to be crossing our channel. We can talk about all of these things. And frankly, I want to have that conversation because immigration in the UK is absolutely nowhere near where it should be. We are letting far too many people in, right? We need to be very strict on who we are letting into the country, and that is a matter of fact. But we do not need to be manufacturing, fabricating, creating baseless data, right, that has no merit whatsoever. We don't need to be doing this. And obviously, I'm thinking to myself now, where are these guys' interests? Yes, of course they're conservative. Yes, of course they're, right-leaning. But why is it that they're doing this, right? Why is it that they're creating fake data? So I go onto their website and I have a look for any sort of affiliated members or anything like that. And I don't find anything, right? I don't find anything. So what I have to do is I have to go into the company's house, right? So I go on the company's house and I find that the director, listed director, is a guy called Robert Bates. Okay, so I type in Robert Bates, no worries. It turns out that this Robert Bates guy is a senior campaigner for Reform UK, right? So he's a massive campaigner for Reform UK. He loves Reform UK. And he was actually, funnily enough, in a sort of like a Channel 4 expose with the Reform UK other members, other people at the top positions. And he was caught on a hot mic saying that he spent double the allowed amount for funding, right, for the general election. And then later, obviously, he found out that he got caught, and he said, "Oh, I was actually just joking." Oh yeah, sure you were, mate. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're joking. Anyway, these guys do not care about, telling the truth. That's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make here, is that these guys don't really care about telling the truth. They will continue to purport their nonsense, right? And this is coming from someone, like I've said now, someone who isn't happy with the current state of immigration. But there is a difference between criticizing the state of immigration in the United Kingdom and spewing this absolute belligerent racial animus, this hate, right, of anyone that looks a little different to you do, right? Anyone that looks a little different, anyone who has a slightly different, darker skin tone, complexion to you, they're immediately, subject to hate and all of this. What are we doing here? We have become so divided, and it's ironic because the United Kingdom starts with what? It starts with the word united. We've become the divided kingdom, right? And we've become divided at what? At the behest of this immigration problem. We're picking fights with one another when what we should be doing is looking up, seeing who actually are, allowing this to happen. It isn't me, right? Or it isn't any of the native Muslims that live here who are allowing all these people into the country. And you can ask a lot of them, they will be against it. They will say, a lot of these people are illegal, right? And we're not for that. We are for legal immigration. And even that is a conversation that can be had. But what's different is having these types of conversations, being reasonable, being fair, right? Being objective. And then this absolute hate, belligerent hate, some of the stuff I'm seeing, right? These are not comparable. These are not analogous, right? What I would say, what I would end that discussion on is that what we need to do is we need to understand who are making these decisions, right? Who are ultimately making these decisions? Who are the top dogs? And this isn't even Kia, right? This Kia's just a guy, man. Kia's just a puppet. He's being told what to do. The real people who are allowing this to happen, we will never know their name, right? They're probably in a dark room, right? Probably in a tuxedo, right? Smoking a cigarette. And they're just telling people what to do. Making orders and such. So, do your due diligence, guys. Whenever you're citing data, make sure it's valid, make sure it's actually correct. Okay? Charlie Kirk was a prominent right-wing political commentator in the United States, right? He was massive. I would say he was probably number one, okay? And it wasn't even close. He had massive influence. A lot of people will argue that had Charlie Kirk not campaigned for Trump through his Turning Point USA, then Trump would not have won the election, okay? There's an argument to be made there, absolutely. He definitely helped in terms of getting the young vote, in terms of grassroots campaigning and all of that. On the 10th of September, a month ago now, he was assassinated in cold blood, okay? One of the worst things I've ever saw in my life, and I wasn't even there. So think about the people that were there that saw it. It was terrible, right? It was condemnable, absolutely. It was horrific. It was so sudden. That's what made it so horrible to see, is that it was literally like a shot like that. It was terrible, man. It was just one of the worst things I've ever saw in my life. And if we go back to this Gaza thing, this genocide, and think about the things we've become immune to, desensitized to, these past 2 years, and then we see the Charlie Kirk thing, and even that hits, like, it was, frankly, like I said, condemnable, okay? Any horrific act like that must be condemned, because it was terrible. And that comes from a young Muslim guy, and I was really the number one enemy to someone like Charlie Kirk, right? Young Muslim men who stood firm on their beliefs, on their principles, on their religion. Charlie Kirk didn't like that, right? He was very much anti-Islam, and he wasn't afraid to say it. And he said some despicable things about our religion and our Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. He will be held accountable on that, absolutely. And that will be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do. I'm not talking about that here. What we're talking about is Charlie Kirk and his alliance with Israel. It always goes back to Israel. I'm seeing a lot of theories being thrown around by a lot of people, a lot of different types of people. Even some of my close friends, right? Was it Israel? Was it a coordinated attack with the United States and with Israel? And before I get into what I think, what I feel, what my opinion is, I must first say that Charlie Kirk was a massive advocate for Israel, okay? He was a staunchly pro-Israel advocate. There's no getting away from that fact, right? There's no disputing that. There's no negating that. And I'm not going to do that here because it's not. Some of the people that are trying to do that, right? I'm sorry to say, no, it's not true. that doesn't mean that he couldn't have been anti-Israel in the future. And that's the point I want to make here, is that Charlie Kirk was, I believe, 31, okay, when he got assassinated. 31 years old. And I must say he accomplished a lot for the age of 31. He started around my age in terms of, his political campaigns and such and all of that. But the matter of fact is that he was very pro-Israel. However, he's only 31, right? Give him 10 years. And this is someone, by the way, who absolutely could have ran for president in the future, right? Absolutely could have ran for president and probably would have won also, right? If you look at some of his views, I remember he was on the PBD podcast once. And this is actually one I want to reference, is that, but before we do that, he gets tens of millions of views on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok myself, but tens of millions of views on TikTok, right? And you know, that generation is being exposed to, like my generation, being exposed to so much different types of content. Think about how many people he made right-wing and how many people who were fans of his, especially in the United States. And that's all that really matters, because you only need the United States vote to win the election, obviously. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have got this Charlie Kirk guy. Give him 10 years. Do you really think he would have been as pro-Israel as he was? He was already starting to say these things. He was on the PBD podcast. He asked PBD, he said, perhaps there was a stand down order, right? October the 7th, perhaps there was a stand down order. What does that mean? Perhaps the Israeli forces were told to hold fire. If any threat of terror comes onto our state, let it happen. And when the government and the people in charge and the generals tell you that, you can't go against that, or you're out the door. Perhaps there was a stand down order, right? It's not like we weren't asking this 2 years ago, Charlie. But, it's fine. He was asking these types of questions. Perhaps there was a stand down order. Then he was with Ben Shapiro, might have been a few days, might have been a few weeks after his death. And he said, Ben Shapiro, why is it that we can't criticize Israel? It sometimes feels like we can criticize the United States, our own host country, more so than we can criticize a foreign nation like Israel, right? And Ben Shapiro pulled this funny face. He's like, what are you doing, bro? It's supposed to be on our side. And this is what I mean. He's 31. Think about when he was 41, right? And perhaps then he'll run for president and he's anti-Israel. Think about the threat that he becomes to the United States relationship with Israel, right? Just like JFK. We're not going to get into that. I don't want to get cancelled. Not the first episode, please. But the matter of fact is that he was obviously very pro-Israel, but I'm asking the question, where could he have been? Perhaps there was a coordinated attack. Because if you look at Trump's reaction, I think it was the day after Charlie Kirk's death, and this is actually what got Jimmy Kimmel took off air, or one of the reasons is that he reacted to this video. A reporter goes up to Trump, they ask him, how are you holding up, sir? How are you holding up, President? This tragedy that's befallen our state, how are you feeling? Trump goes, I've never been better. I'm so great. Have you seen the ballroom? I'm like, what? The ballroom? Bruv, there's a time and a place to talk about the ballroom. It's not now. You know what I mean? What is this? But, some people are saying that's just Trump. Trump's an unemotional guy. Or maybe he has emotion, but he tries to hide it for the betterment of the state. There's so much that people say. But that's not a normal reaction. That's an abnormal reaction. Nobody reacts like that. Anyhow, whatever happened, he was obviously pro-Israel, and maybe him being pro-Israel got him took out, Maybe him being pro-Israel, he said a couple of things against Israel, and boom, he's gone. We talk about this Tyler Robinson guy. A little kid, I'm sorry to say, my age, has a shot like that. That doesn't make any sense, right? No way. And the thing is, it's just been swept under the rug so quickly. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right, right? Nevertheless, this has been episode 1 of Sami Speaks. We've discussed a whole host of different topics. We've gone over them in breadth. We've gone over them in depth. We've gone over them in a thorough capacity, I must say. Sami Speaks episodes come out weekly on Mondays, inshallah. They will be coming out at 12 p.m. GMT. And I hope to see you, inshallah, next Monday. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.